Welcome to MassBioEd's 6th Annual Life Sciences Workforce Conference. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sunny Schwartz. I'm the Executive Director of MassBioEd. And I hope you're ready for a day of not just listening today, but we're going to ask for your ideas to solve the workforce challenges facing the life sciences industry. We're going to start today by getting a hot off the press briefing of MassBioEd's 2021 Life Sciences Employment Outlook, and then we'll break into groups to delve into how to expand the pool of workers. And this is where we need your ideas and input. After a networking lunch, we'll have 2 sessions with experts and time for questions and answers. One will be with 3 CEOs on their plans for the new workplace post-COVID, and one outlining the extensive growth coming up in the life sciences industry in Massachusetts. None of this conference is pre-recorded. It's all being brought to you live, and we actually really need your participation throughout the day. For those of you less familiar with MassBioEd, we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to building and sustaining the life sciences workforce in Massachusetts, with a focus on diversifying the workforce and providing opportunities for new people to enter the field. We do this by serving the 3 parts of the workforce: the emerging workforce of students in middle and high school, the imminent workforce of college students, as well as adults looking to get into the life sciences, and the incumbent workforce of current life sciences employees. Our key programs and services include teacher training and mentoring, curriculum development for middle and high school teachers, equipment grants for schools, extensive career information and exposure to life science careers for students at all levels, and 2 things that you'll see today: labor trends reports and our annual Life Science Workforce Conference. And just yesterday, I'm very excited to say that we launched our first cohort of a new life sciences apprenticeship program. 19 students started training in partnership with Northeastern University, and they've already been hired by 5 life sciences companies. And as soon as they finish their coursework, they'll start on-the-job training at the companies, leading directly to full-time permanent employment as biomanufacturing technicians. And in August, we will launch the first cycle of the apprenticeship program for clinical trial associates. Each year, we train about 200 teachers through free professional development workshops. Nearly all of them report implementing our labs in their classrooms. We impact about 15,000 students through hands-on lab-based activities and career awareness programs. We reach over 150 schools, the majority of which are in low-income districts. We also provide training to hundreds of professionals in the industry on technical and soft skills. If you'd like to get involved, one great way is to become a career ambassador and talk with students directly about careers in the life sciences and your own career journey. Your company or college can also host students for a college or career exploration day. And we are also recruiting employers for our apprenticeship program. So if you want to join any of those efforts, we very much welcome you. You can just email us at volunteer@massbioed.org. Well, it's been a year like no other. And this year, I'm really excited to say that MassBioEd is celebrating our 20th anniversary. We are so proud to have worked hand in hand with MassBio over the past 20 years to educate the next generation of scientists. Our industry has literally saved the world this year, including the Cambridge-based company Moderna. And we know the need to meet the growing demand for workers is greater than ever. This past year has also brought a long overdue reckoning to end racism in our country. MassBioEd has made diversifying the workforce part of our official mission. And we are excited to work with all of you, both to meet employers' demand for talent while providing opportunities for new and diverse job seekers to enter careers in life sciences. Before we get started on the program, I'd like to take a moment to thank our generous sponsors. Sanofi Genzyme, our breakout group sponsor, thank you so much. Alexandria Real Estate, Alnylam Pharmaceuticals, and Biogen, our networking sponsors. MassBio, Mass Life Sciences Center, and Third Rock Ventures, our session sponsors. Coriolis, J. Kalman and Associates, Northeastern University, Propel Careers, RMG Associates, and Stratacuity, our supporting sponsors. Thank you so very much. Please make sure to visit our sponsors in the exhibit booth in the sponsor section during lunch. Also, we could not do the work we do without our funders. Thank you to our partners who fund our programs all year long. You are critical to the success of training teachers and students that we do. Thank you so much. And in a moment, you will hear a presentation highlighting the key findings of our 2021 Massachusetts Life Sciences Employment Outlook, which was released just yesterday. There is a link to download the report for free under the Resources tab. But first, I want to let you know what's going to happen after the presentation. Afterwards, at 11 o'clock, you will have the opportunity to participate in one of 7 breakout sessions. And this is where we really need your help. As you'll hear from Karla shortly, no surprise, the supply of workers is not keeping up with the demand. And as we'll learn this afternoon, more growth in the workforce is heading our way very soon. So we need to think about expanding the pie of workers rather than companies continuing to compete for the same slices of the pie. We need your help in brainstorming ways to grow the pool of qualified people in particular areas such as biomanufacturing, clinical research, and data science. There will also be sessions dedicated to the specific challenges in recruiting and retaining individuals from diverse backgrounds and those from outside of the US. A session will focus on higher education and how academia can do more to attract students to the life sciences. And one will discuss ways in which companies could be more welcoming of employees with non-traditional backgrounds, a shift that could open new pathways for more people to join this industry. Each breakout session will be led by an expert facilitator who will provide an overview and guide the group discussion. So be prepared to engage in the conversation that follows these data insights you're about to hear. And so now I am so pleased to introduce Karla Talanian, MassBioEd's Director of Talent and Workforce Development, who will deliver an overview of the key findings of MassBioEd's 2021 Life Sciences Employment Outlook. Please put any questions for Karla in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen anytime throughout the presentation, and she will address them at the end. Karla?
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for coming. So as Sunny set up, today I'm going to be presenting the 2021 Life Sciences Employment Outlook. It's been a year and a half since we released our previous Employment Outlook. It's been quite a year and a half. This year, we collaborated with Techonomy partners to gather and analyze the data. And we simultaneously worked with the National Coalition of State Bioscience Institutes to coordinate a nationwide approach to analyzing the data for the life sciences industry across the country. This broader report will actually be presented next week at the Bio Conference. So today you're getting kind of a sneak peek. As Sunny mentioned, this Massachusetts report was officially released yesterday. It's available as a free download from our website, massbioed.org. And if you haven't yet already, I encourage you to get a copy of your own. So today for the presentation, I'm going to divide it into roughly 4 parts. We're going to start with the big picture look on aggregate employment numbers. And then we'll look at aggregate hiring demand and look at some trends and comparisons with other states. Then we're going to drill down a little bit and try to get a little more granular about what employers are looking for, who they're hiring, what kind of skills they need. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a look at the talent pipeline to see where the life scientists of tomorrow are coming from and how many are there. And then, as Sunny mentioned, we will be taking questions after the presentation. In the interest of time and virtual technology, I'm not going to be answering questions as they come up, but feel free to put your questions into the Q&A tab whenever they come into your mind. And one of my colleagues will be collating these, and then we'll have a dedicated Q&A session after the presentation. So first up, big picture, aggregate employment. So the life sciences industry currently employs about 90,000 people here in Massachusetts. This was the number at the end of 2020. I would venture to guess it's a little over 90,000 by now. And the growth of this employment has been very consistent over a long period of time. So if you look at a 10-year period, we've grown 67% in Massachusetts compared to a 35% growth in life sciences employment in the rest of the country. Just over the past year, comparing 2020 to 2019, Massachusetts life sciences employment grew at 4%, double the rate of life sciences employment in the rest of the country. This leads to the concept of location quotient. This is a tool that economists use to compare the concentration of a particular industry within a specific geographic area to the concentration of that industry nationwide. And the location quotient for Massachusetts is 3.6, which is really quite high. It means it's 3.6 times more concentrated in life sciences here than the US average. And if you look at the location quotient for some other states that you might think are our close competitors, California, New Jersey, North Carolina, certainly they do have ratios that are greater than 1, but definitely not near the 3.6 that we can boast of here in Massachusetts. Let's look at it a different way. This is an employment trend for Massachusetts and the US across 4 years, so 2017 to 2020. And with everything normalized to 100 in January of 2017, this green line here represents the Massachusetts life sciences employment growth over 4 years. Very robust and very consistent. The blue line, the dark blue line here represents the US life sciences employment growth. Again, definitely consistent growth, but not nearly as robust as we have here in Massachusetts. The yellow line represents the US private sector as a whole. No surprise there was a decrease through 2020, mostly because of the pandemic. But interestingly enough, this light blue line represents the Massachusetts private sector, which suffered significantly more decline over the last year than, especially when you consider how well our life sciences industry did compared to the rest of the country. If you look at these historical growth trends and extrapolate out, we predict that we will see 5,000 new jobs coming in every year through 2024, adding a total of 20,000 new employees for an expected employment number by the end of 2024 of over 109,000. I encourage you to keep this number in mind, especially if you attend the third session today, where we will have a dedicated conversation about the growth of the industry and expected expansion. And we have some real estate experts talking about that. I think, again, keep this number in mind. I think that this will be a really important and revelatory talk. So, who is employed by the life sciences industry? Well, the short answer to that is scientists. If you look at occupational categories, medical scientists make up 10,000 employees in the life sciences industry and growing over a 4-year period at a pretty substantial clip of 30%. But the term medical scientists really needs a little bit of unpacking. These are government Bureau of Labor Statistics categories that don't necessarily align with what a job title would be. So as defined by the BLS, a medical scientist is somebody with a PhD or an MD degree who is leading scientific research and development for the express purpose of pharmaceutical development. The next category, again, BLS definition is IT occupations. And this really needs some unpacking here because this includes your IT staff, it includes your network administrators, cybersecurity analysts, things like that. But relevant to this industry, it also includes people who are computational scientists, the genomicists, the computational biologists and chemists, software developers, biostatisticians. All of those people get grouped by the government into this category. Altogether, they make a sizable fraction of the entire employment base, and they're growing at a very rapid rate, 47% over the past 4 years. Just as a note, the biochemists, biophysicists, microbiologists, these would be defined as people who are individual contributors directly involved in the particular scientific discipline, but not necessarily managing a project or leading a project. So this incorporates people at all educational and seniority levels. And a notable fact that microbiologists have increased the employment base by 58% over the past 4 years. I also want to mention engineers. So industrial engineers have grown in employment by 29%. Taken together with mechanical engineers, they also comprise a pretty substantial base of the employment. And I think they need, I should say the growth of industrial engineers really speaks to the maturation of the industry here in Massachusetts. As companies scale up, we need more individuals who can design the machinery and the environments in which to do so. And the other occupational category of note here is project managers. They were huge outliers in terms of employment growth over the past few years, growing by 160%, which is definitely notable. I'm going to drill down on this a little bit more. So the occupational breakdown of employment in the life sciences sector, we're comparing Massachusetts to the greater US, and we're looking at trends over a 10-year period. So first, I want to call your attention to this blue bar here near the top. This medium blue bar represents production workers. This is just an interesting graph to see how employment in the Massachusetts life sciences industry compares nationwide. So in the state, our production workers take up maybe about 6% of the total employment base. If you look nationally, it's almost double. We're looking at about 11% of the employment base based in manufacturing and production. The lighter blue bars here represent administrative support. Again, there's a larger proportion of these workers nationwide than there is here in Massachusetts. Here, we're looking at about 7%. Nationwide, we're looking at about 11%. The dark blue bars closer to the bottom represent management. Now, I'm going to talk in a future slide a little bit more about how management is defined. But for here, I want to look at the growth. If you look back in 2010, both in Massachusetts and nationwide, management employment represented about 10% of the whole employment base. 2020, we're looking at about 18% here in Massachusetts versus only 13% nationwide. And then the final bar here, these gray bars, these represent life scientists, which seems a little bit counterintuitive if we're only looking at the life sciences industry. How come life scientists represent a relatively small component of it? But again, these are individual contributors responsible directly who are engaged directly in scientific development. In Massachusetts, life scientists comprise about 17% of our employment base, which is about twice that nationwide. Nationwide, they're looking at 7 or 8% of the total employment being taken by life scientists. Why is all this important? Well, it's not just COVID. Massachusetts companies are responsible for bringing a huge number and variety of life-saving treatments to patients in need. This is a snapshot taken by our sister organization, MassBio, in the middle of 2020. And at that point, there were over 2,000 drug candidates in development here in Massachusetts. 16 of them were pending FDA approval, and that represents 12% of the entire pipeline of US pharmaceuticals and 6% of the global pipeline of new pharmaceuticals, all from right here in Massachusetts. And as I said, it's not just COVID. Moderna has gone from a virtual unknown to anybody outside of the biotech industry to literally a topic of kitchen table conversation across the globe over the past year. That is an amazing story from a scientific point of view, as well as a humanitarian point of view. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that here in Massachusetts, our companies are at the forefront of inventing and delivering all sorts of life-saving and life-improving medications, particularly in oncology, 166 investigational new drugs just for solid tumors, some other oncology indications as well, Alzheimer's disease, which is one of the scourges of our times. So it's just important to keep in mind as we go through this presentation. In addition to that, I just want to call your attention to the importance of the life sciences industry just as a general economic driver in Massachusetts. The Economic Policy Institute uses an algorithm called the jobs multiplier to assess the effect of a single new job in a given industry on the overall job creation in their geographic area. So all of our life sciences companies really fall into two categories, or mostly into these two categories: scientific R&D and pharmaceutical manufacturing. And what this tells us is that for each job created in one of these industries, if it's scientific R&D, we're creating 8.5 new jobs in the local economy. And in pharmaceutical manufacturing, for each job created, we're looking at an additional between 5 and 6 jobs created in the local economy. And these are divided into jobs from supplier companies as well as induced jobs being, the restaurants, real estate, transportation, retail, other jobs. If we shift now to hiring demand, now everything that I've talked about so far has been employment. And this is data that is directly taken from the National Bureau of Labor Statistics. So these are people who are already employed in the industry. But now we want to take a peek at hiring demand as represented by job postings. So this is sort of a little bit of a glimpse into the future. Job postings are deduplicated, so there's special algorithms in place that only represent each job one time. We know that the trend for hiring demand has been on the rise continually for well over a decade, but right now we're really going to focus just on the recent past. Again, everything is normalized to 100 back in January of 2017. We saw almost continual growth in the life sciences, represented by this dark blue line here, but as well as the overall economy. So this is the Massachusetts private sector in total, represented by the green line, peaking in middle of 2019. If you can remember, 2 years ago, unemployment in Massachusetts was something like 0.9%. We did see a retraction, partially, I think, digestion and absorption of people who had been hired recently, and also kind of the fact that there weren't very many people left to hire. But nevertheless, 2020 started off with a little bit of a rise, and then COVID hit. So as you can see within this yellow rectangle here, there was a quick and significant decline in the overall private sector hiring demand. And in the life sciences, we never really saw a decline. We saw a pause. And I think in a lot of ways, the pause was really people regrouping. People were trying to figure out how to keep their current employees safe, how to transition them to remote work, how to keep the ones who had to come into the building safe. And hiring new people really wasn't a priority at this point. And everyone kind of thought at that point, things would blow over and in a month or two, everything would be back to normal. But once we realized that wasn't the case, there was a renewed effort to hire new people in the life sciences industry, as well as in the broader private sector, but not to the extent as we were hiring again in the life sciences. Echoing the theme of the earlier employment data, job postings indicate that the life science industry is and will continue to be an important player in the Massachusetts economy overall. So if you look at the percentage of the percentage of life science job postings as a percentage of all job postings in the private sector, that percentage has grown in Massachusetts from 2.5% 4 years ago to 3% now. Again, a small fraction, but if you look at how it compares nationwide, it's roughly 3 times higher in Massachusetts than it is nationwide, which again echoes back to that location quotient of 3.6 that we have here in Massachusetts. So the take-home message, Massachusetts life sciences industry is a vital and growing part of the entire Massachusetts business ecosystem. Our products make the world a better place. They make people healthier and improve quality of life. And the industry really has an outsized effect on the overall health and vitality of the Massachusetts economy. I'm probably preaching to the choir given the audience here today, but I believe as a community, we really need to bring these messages to our greater communities, and especially to young people, to high school and college students, that the life sciences industry is a great source for jobs that provide meaningful, important work. Moving ahead, we will be drilling down now into exactly what employers want. So over the last 4 years, 89% of job postings required a candidate to have a bachelor's degree or higher. Only 11% of jobs said that they would be open to people with a high school equivalent or an associate's degree. Compared to the US life sciences industry, there's a little bit of difference here. 21% of jobs nationwide in the life sciences are open to people with a high school diploma or an associate's degree. The requirements for a bachelor's degree are essentially the same. We do have a higher percentage of jobs that require at least a master's degree, and about 50% more of our jobs require at least a PhD. 18% of all job postings versus 12% of all job postings nationwide. So why is that? I think there's two explanations. One is that Massachusetts is really rich in the percentage of startups in early phase companies. The percentage is much higher in Massachusetts than in the rest of the country. And these kinds of companies are typically staffed with a few founding PhDs, very few support staff, very few administrative staff. But as the industry matures, there's a broadening of these skills that are needed to fill the operational and support roles at each individual company. And as that happens, this will open up more opportunities for those with relatively lower educational accomplishments. Another reason to keep in mind is that when the entire US is analyzed, there are more industry subsectors included in the life sciences. For example, agriculture is huge in other parts of the country, not so much here in Massachusetts. Bioscience product distribution is another industry category that's included in the national numbers that is virtually non-existent here in Massachusetts. But when you look at companies, big agricultural companies, big old pharmaceutical companies, they have huge campuses with thousands, if not tens of thousands of employees located in other states. And these kinds of work environments generally require a much larger percentage of support and administrative personnel than we typically see here in Massachusetts. But specifically, what are companies looking for? Scientists is the easy answer to that question. Lumped together here in this top category, we refer to as general research scientists. And this includes job titles such as principal scientist, associate scientist, research scientist, postdoctoral scientist, et cetera. It would just be impossible to list all the variations on that. So they are lumped together in this top category. Management. I told you before I was going to unpack the term management a little bit, and this is when we're going to do that. So this category represents all managerial levels. So you have your human resources managers, your IT managers represented here, but a very large percentage of what is considered management is actually highly scientific positions. So these are the PhD level scientists who are managing other scientists, who are running projects, who are running groups, who are running programs, who are managing external collaborations. Basically, anybody with a managerial title gets put into this category, but I just want to call your attention to the fact that contrary to what the title general management indicate, this is oftentimes a very scientific, technical management title. Number 3 is data scientists. Data scientists, I think everybody knows, are in extremely high demand in the life sciences industry, but also more broadly across many industry sectors. In fact, after this presentation, one of our breakout sessions will be devoted to talking about ways to get more data scientists to come into this field. So if you're particularly interested in that, I would encourage you to participate in that breakout conversation. Medical scientists, this is sort of another government category that needs a little bit of unpacking. According to the government, this is a category that refers to MD and PhD level scientists who do not perform any patient care functions, but who are expressly involved in scientific research for developing pharmaceuticals. So whereas this first category here of general scientists incorporates all individual contributors across all educational and seniority backgrounds, the medical scientist is really the highest niche in the scientific occupational hierarchy. I want to bounce down here and just talk for a minute about sales and account representatives. So again, kind of like general management, this can be a little counterintuitive, perhaps a little bit misleading. Within the life sciences industry, many sales positions do require at minimum a bachelor's degree in a life sciences field. It's not terribly uncommon for them to require graduate level degrees. Why? Because these people aren't necessarily just selling products. They are really working as customer support partners. They are helping to design and develop equipment and products that customers need to further their own scientific research. And very, very often, these job postings will state a significant scientific background in order for a candidate to be considered. So all of this chart represents job hiring demand over 4 years, 2017 to 2020. And we did want to look to see if there's any change in this based in 2020 as a result of the COVID pandemic. There was really only one noticeable shift, and that was down here in the bottom bar, production workers, which incorporate your manufacturing technicians, manufacturing supervisors, people like that. This category jumped to be about in the middle of the bar if you only look at the 2020 data. And I think that's probably a direct result of COVID. There was a lot of hiring that took place for technicians to make vaccines, to make diagnostic kits, et cetera. The most challenging positions to fill. So as part of the work that we did with Techonomy and the Coalition of State Bioscience Institutes, we sent out a hiring survey that went to HR representatives and some hiring managers. We wanted to get a qualitative feel for what the most difficult positions to fill were, and also what individuals at companies thought would be the expected areas of highest growth over the next year. Probably no surprise here, regulatory affairs professionals came in number one. They always do. This is a very long-term trend. Research scientists came in number two. I think I've already spoken a lot about that. Data scientists were number three. And again, I've definitely spoken about that, but I can't bring that point home enough. There is a huge need for computational biologists, computational chemists, and really for people who can merge these two skill sets. We need people who have a deep foundational understanding of the science and who can also write code or explore the statistics. And engineering, product and process development was also a difficult to fill position. Expected high volume over the next year, manufacturing and production was number one that people pointed to. With the COVID pandemic, that really brought home the acknowledgement across the country and across industries of the need to sort of resource our manufacturing supply chains. A lot of this is going to be brought back to the US. And I think that that's probably one of the reasons why people cited this as an area of high growth over the next few years. Quality assurance also goes back into bringing manufacturing back to the US. And research scientists, again, show up as something for high volume expectations over the next year. So take-home messages. There is a strong need for the hyper-skilled and really highly educated scientists to work in this industry. There's a growing need, in addition, for people with managerial and occupational expertise as companies mature from the startup phase into clinical and commercial entities. And there's an impending need for more technical support and operational support for people to run manufacturing operations as the industry matures. So now we're going to take a peek at the talent pipeline. Who are the employees of the future going to be? And more importantly, how many of them are there? So over 10 years, the Massachusetts graduates have increased across all educational levels. So this chart looks at just Massachusetts college and university degree conferrals at all degree levels. Over 10 years at the associate's degree level, we saw a 154% increase in graduates in life science related fields. At the bachelor's degree, only a 55% increase, although the numbers are certainly much bigger. There was a 113% increase in master's degree conferrals and only a 33% increase in doctoral level conferrals over 10 years. Of course, many Massachusetts graduates go elsewhere to begin their careers. Likewise, many Massachusetts companies recruit on a national or an international level. So we wanted to compare the graduate rate in Massachusetts to that nationwide. There wasn't much difference. So these are data over 4 years instead of 10 years. Not much difference at the associate's degree level. Both were growing. Again, not really much difference at the bachelor's or the master's degree level. But this is very notable here. At the doctoral degree level, in Massachusetts, we increased the number of PhD conferrals by almost 17% over the past 4 years. And that exclusively gives you the increase across the US. If you took Massachusetts out, there was effectively zero increase in PhD conferrals in any life science related field in the US. This is very, very disturbing. No increase in PhD conferrals in the United States is a really scary statistic that we need to think long and hard about. If you look quickly at the growth, just in all degrees, 64% increase in total over 10 years. This is associate's degree through PhDs. 16%, again, the blue represents Massachusetts numbers. US numbers grew at a much slower rate over 10 years, not too much slower, but slower over the last 4 years. And what does this mean? So looking at the past decade, again, reminding you from some of the data at the beginning of this presentation, Massachusetts employment grew by 67%. The demand for managers, again, many of which are scientifically trained, grew by 167%. And the demand for individual contributor scientists grew by 76%, compared to graduation growth rates, which are much smaller, whether you look at Massachusetts or the entire US. And I also just want to mention, if you're looking over a 10-year period, these numbers are a little worse than they look here, because obviously anybody who receives a PhD at some point over the past 10 years probably also received a bachelor's degree. Likewise for master's degrees, so these numbers are necessarily a little bit inflated. And it's even worse than those data suggest. There was some research done recently out of Bentley University that looked at what happens when STEM graduates start their careers. And what they found was that only about a quarter of the STEM graduates actually pursue a scientific or technical career. Another quarter pursue what's termed STEM-related careers. So these might be architects or healthcare managers, but they're not directly involved in science, technology, engineering, or math. We effectively lose about half of our graduates. Some go into completely different industries, some go into business-related industries that are not STEM specific. And actually, the author of this paper is going to lead one of our breakout sessions at the end of this presentation, Dr. Fred Ledley. If you're interested in this, I recommend you to sit in on his breakout session. This disparity was even more pronounced if you looked only at underrepresented students. For underrepresented minority students, less than 20% of those who graduate with a STEM degree actually pursue a career in a STEM-related field. And there's another breakout session that will be devoted to hiring and retaining people of diverse backgrounds. Again, if that's your particular interest, please join that breakout session. Well, one way to fill this talent gap is through foreign workers. And according to the NSF, foreign-born workers' share of occupational employment is really quite substantial. So if you look across all science and engineering fields, they represent 38% of the employment. Within the life sciences, it's slightly less, but still about a third of all employees are foreign born. And if you look at the talent pipeline, this is again NSF data, who they looked at PhD recipients as a function of their national background. And just looking at the 2019 data, computer and information scientists receiving a PhD, 60% of them were here temporarily on student visas. Now, some of them may convert to permanent status, others may not. If you look at just biology and biomedical sciences PhD conferrals, about a quarter of them were here on temporary visas. This is a significant national point of interest. We don't know what's going to happen to these people who are here temporarily. Maybe they'll return to their home countries. Maybe they'll go to a third country that's, for whatever reason, might be deemed more desirable. Maybe a lot of them will stay here. But if you want to dig a little bit deeper into that, we do have another breakout session after this presentation. And that's going to be devoted to recruiting and retaining people of with foreign-born people. So take-home message. Again, the supply of talent is not keeping up with demand, and there's really no clear end in sight to the competition for talent. The future of our Massachusetts life sciences industry depends on growing the pool. As Sunny says, expanding the pie of the pool of trained, qualified people who can do this kind of work. We currently lead the world in life sciences. But our continued success really depends on building and maintaining and retaining a world-class workforce. So with that all being said, I strongly encourage you to attend and participate in one of these breakout sessions. This is really important. We will bring together all of the ideas and insights that come out of this. And later on this month, we'll be publishing a report to incorporate all of the ideas that come out of these sessions. So whatever you say won't be just lost to the ether. We do hope that this will become a living document. At the end of the Q&A session, all you have to do is click sessions on your computer screen. That will return you to the main agenda, and then you can choose which group you would like to join. And then after the breakout groups, we also invite you to join our lunch networking time. And in the afternoon, you'll be able to reconvene for a discussion among CEOs on the future of the workplace and how flexibility and mobility and hybrid schedules will affect our workplaces in the future. And finally, a chat with some real estate experts. Bob Coughlin and Ben Bradford will be here, and that session will be moderated by Rita Smith from AbbVie to talk about growth and expansion across the state of Massachusetts. Right now, my colleague Kritzy Montesiers will begin asking questions from the audience. So you can continue to add questions into the Q&A tab, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can.
Thanks, Karla. Thanks for your really important and insightful presentation. So to start off, we do have a couple questions in the chat. Starting off from Venetia, is there research been done on where people in going after complete their degrees and why they are leaving?
Yes, there is a body of research out there that was way beyond the scope of this presentation. There was actually an article in Science Advances just a couple of weeks ago about that. I don't have the answer for you. I think that that's a topic worthy of a lot of more study. To start, join Dr. Ledley's breakout session here and see what he has to say about it. He's much more of an expert in that than I am.
Thanks. All right, so while these numbers speak to the need for degrees, how will we make them more accessible to people with lives that don't align well with current paradigms?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Well, one thing that MassBioEd is trying to do is through our apprenticeship program is to make entry into some of these careers a little bit more accessible. Through that program, we are actively recruiting adults who have a little bit of work experience, but not in the life sciences industry, who are looking to transition to a job that's more meaningful, more more sustainable. We provide a very intensive but short and free educational period so that they can sort of get a strong foundation. And that's followed by a year of on-the-job training at one of our employer partners. And I think that programs like that can really go a long way to making access to these careers a little bit more accessible for people who would otherwise have no way of breaking into the industry.
Thanks. So what are MassBioEd's plans or new programs to help in solving the labor supply of biotech or talent demand mismatch?
So at MassBioEd, we do a lot. I like to think of it in terms of planting seeds as well as picking fruit. So planting seeds, we have to be in the schools, and we are, but it's a big, big job. There needs to be in addition to teaching kids authentic science at the high school level, we also need to help them understand what the opportunities are for careers. Also at the college level, even students who are majoring in a biomedical field often really don't understand what the opportunities are in the industry. They in both at high school and in college, they sort of assume if they major in biology, they'll become a doctor or maybe a nurse. And if they decide for whatever reason that path isn't theirs to take, we often just lose them completely. We need to be much more intensive and expansive about bringing career exploration and career activities to young people.
I think.
And Kretzy knows about that because she is the manager of our career exploration program. So if anybody has ideas for that, you can reach out to Kretzy directly.
Yes, thanks, Karla. While GED and associate degree holders might not represent the largest potential labor source, they are significant stepping stones to advanced degree attainment. And investing in high school and community college/certification bridge programs will be essential to growing the life sciences workforce. Can you share insights or data from the report in this regard?
Yeah, well, not necessarily from the report, but I can talk about some other programs that are happening. So, yes, I fully agree that getting a community college degree is a great stepping stone, especially for many reasons, for people who can't afford a traditional four-year degree right away. Sometimes traditional college just doesn't meet the lifestyle needs of people, especially if they have other responsibilities they need to deal with. There's a lot of programs right here in Massachusetts. So for example, at Middlesex Community College, there is an A to M program. They're in partnership with Northeastern University. Once somebody comes into Middlesex and gets an associate's degree in biotechnology, assuming they've done well enough in their classes, they will automatically be accepted by Northeastern's College of Professional Studies, where they can continue on for a bachelor's degree, and then additionally after that get a master's degree. This program incorporates financial supports. It also incorporates holistic supports for tutoring, mentoring, and things like that. So more programs like that would probably go a long way to helping people get into that first rung of the ladder.
All right, thank you. And a question from Hal. So the production percent seems low. Is this due to the supply or demand? How is biomanufacturing associates classified in the BLS?
Right, so the BLS numbers would come under that general production category that we showed.
All right, thank you. Which breakout session focuses on hiring and recruiting diverse backgrounds?
So there's sort of three that you can choose from. One will be talking about hiring and retaining people and making our workplaces more inclusive for people once they are enrolled, and that's going to be, and then there's another one that's specifically devoted to recruiting and hiring people who are foreign born. And then Krista Licata from Lab Central is going to host a session on really broadening these pathways of accessibility for people from non-traditional backgrounds. So, programs like the A to M program I mentioned, like the apprenticeship program, many others that haven't been thought of yet, to really bridge those very large gaps that people need to just get their foot in the door and gain some access. So again, that final breakout session might be the one that you're looking for.
Yes. So Phyllis S. wants to know, have you looked at the population of employees in the life sciences who are of a diverse background and how that compares to the other life sciences hotspots in the US?
That's a good question. No, I have not done that. That's not in this report. To the best of my knowledge, it's not in the national report either, but that hasn't been published yet. No, I don't have an answer for that, but that's a very good question. I would venture to guess it's probably similar across the country, but I don't have the data to back that up.
Yeah. All right, and Kim H wants to know where the job function allows for it. Are Massachusetts life sciences companies actually pivoting to the emerging post-pandemic workforce model of remote workers and part-time / less than full-time workers?
Yeah, that's a great question. To answer that, I would really encourage you to stay for our second session this afternoon. That entire session will be devoted to that issue. We will be talking about the pros and cons of remote work and flexible scheduling, and how people who absolutely need to be at work full time, people whose work is exclusively in lab at the bench, people who are working in manufacturing, and how that's going to compare and contrast with people who are more desk-based and therefore can have a more remote remote situation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's see, I think Kat T submitted a question about more information on the apprenticeship program.
Mm-hmm. So the apprenticeship program, we are launching 2 apprenticeship programs now in 2021. The first one was for biomanufacturing technicians. They are starting classes literally right now as we speak. They are in their first biology class, which is very exciting. We are recruiting people who, again, would not otherwise have access to entry into this industry. We are looking for people who are a little mature, who have finished their schooling, who have had a few years of work experience under their belts, but who are looking to transition into a more meaningful and sustainable career. So it's a fairly competitive recruitment process for this cohort. We had about 400 applications, narrowing down a progressively narrow funnel. We ended up with 19 individuals who are in this cohort. They have been accepted to work at one of 5 different employers who are partnering with us. They will go through 5 months of really intensive education at Northeastern University. And then at the end of that 5 months, they will transition into a year of on-the-job training with their respective employers. And they'll be considered full-time employees with wages and benefits, et cetera. Our second cohort that we're launching this year is for clinical trial associates. We are recruiting people for that program right now. And if you want more information, I would say just go to the MassBioEd website and look under the apprentices pages.
Mm-hmm. So Bob C would like to know, any idea why quality assurance is not more fully addressed by educators?
I get asked that question a lot. I think in certain programs that is addressed very directly and very explicitly, especially in so the community college programs where they have biotech degrees. They do specifically talk about quality roles. They are important. We all know that. In terms of general biochemistry, molecular biology majors and things like that, I think that's just not really on their radar, and perhaps it should be. Because when people graduate from a typical 4-year program, they may not really have any understanding of the importance of quality in an industrial job.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm getting messages that we need to wrap up now.
Yes.
To get started on the breakout session. So again, you just need to click the sessions tab on your screen and choose the breakout session that you wish to participate in.